I'm going to bring up the slides for our featurette today. This is based on a book called The Gift of Dyslexia. And this is our title slide. And it says, "Dyslexia is my superpower," which you may have never thought of it that way. For those of you who may not be familiar with the word dyslexia, it is the condition most recognized when children learn to print and they get confused between B's and D's and P's and Q's and letters that are the reverse of each other, as if they can't tell them apart and they don't know which ones they should use and when. Dyslexia is a condition of perception, especially visual perception. And the book that I took most of this material from is The Gift of Dyslexia by Ronald D. Davis. It is a very readable book. I highly suggest. I do not have dyslexia. It doesn't even run in my family. But this was such a good book, and I learned things that surprised me. We're going to discuss various aspects of human perception. And there will be things that may surprise you and things that you may have never considered before. And so we begin by looking at The Simpsons, sitting there watching TV. I had 3 younger brothers. And back in the day, we only had black and white TV anyhow. My mother explained to me as the little boys started looking at the TV that babies and toddlers have to learn how to watch TV. That at first it is just motion and color. Back then it was color gray and black and white, moving on the screen, and they do not recognize those blobs of color as representing what they see in the room or in the rest of their lives. If you consider that TV is two-dimensional, there's no depth perception with it. It's hard to tell distances. And so when we are young and first watching TV, we have to learn how to interpret what we are seeing on the screen into what it represents, into representation of what we see in real life, which really doesn't look like that. This makes me wonder about the specialized TV they have for cats and dogs. So I don't know if they ever see it the way we do or the way it is, but it's an example of how we learn to see things. In this case, how we learned to watch TV. This is a diagram of the brain and how we see things. It starts with an apple on the left side, and light bounces off the apple and enters the eyeball through the pupil. And by the time that light strikes the retina, which is on the back of the eyeball on the inside, the image or the representation of that image is now upside down. And if you did not know this, this is a shocker. The first time any image is perceived by you in your eyeball, it is upside down. And by the way, it never looks like a PowerPoint slide or a TV screen, ever, ever, ever. This is a photochemical electrical reaction inside your eye. It travels up the optic nerve until it reaches the part of the brain where vision is held in the occipital lobe in the back of the brain. There, the brain interprets all of the stimuli that it received through the eyes and presents to you vision according to really the way you define the world, But I assure you, it's not a little TV going on in the back of your head. And what you perceive as vision is not the same as what is really out there. All vision is manufactured in the brain. And I wanted to do just one small aside about the Course in Miracles. If you're familiar with A Course in Miracles, there is a workbook for students that has a lesson for every day of the year, 365 lessons. I'm going to read lesson 1 and lesson 2 to you because upon these all else is founded. Lesson 1. Nothing I see in this room or on this street or from this window or in this place means anything. Nothing I see means anything. And lesson 2, I have given everything I see in this room or in the street or out the window all the meaning it has for me. I have given everything I see all the meaning it has for me. And whereas A Course in Miracles is a very spiritual work, metaphysical, this is totally congruent with what we just talked about in the mechanics of the brain. Nothing we see really has any meaning except the meaning we've given it in our brain. There is a useful term when we're talking about these things, and it's called the mind's eye. The mind's eye is a mental perception point from which a person looks at mental images and thoughts. It's also called the point of fixed orientation. Mine seems to be right behind my forehead, and I think that's common. It's like, where do you live? Where do you live in your brain? Where is the center of the sphere of perception that you have? And where do you compare everything in the world to? Because that's where you think you live. This diagram is from the book, and he is recommending a point about this far behind your head. But as I said, mine's like right behind my forehead. Fixed orientation, a point of fixed orientation. Dyslexics perceive the world through a mobile point of orientation. This is the big difference between a person with dyslexia and a person without. If we look at this slide, we see a chair. We see a chair from this particular side. If you were dyslexic, you would also be able to see the chair from the other side. You would be able to see the chair upside down. You would be able to see it upside down and from the other side because you have a mobile point of orientation. But it's still a chair. It's still a chair. It's still a chair. It's still a chair. And this explains why a B is a D, is a P, is a Q. Because of this mobile point of orientation that dyslexics have for seeing the world. I had a girlfriend whose son was in the Army, and he was very good at certain things. He was also a dyslexic. And dyslexics bring some specialized skills that are useful in certain arenas. They are excellent at recon, at reconnoitering things. They can look at a truck or a box or a scene, and they can report what it looks like from the top, each side, the bottom, the back, because that's how they see things. And this is valuable to have a person in your troop that can add that information to what you're doing. It's not that their minds actually travel outside their bodies to examine images from all sides, but rather their mind's eye is quite mobile. We look at this side, this slide is the word cat. This is the word cat seen in all of its permutations, all the ways that a dyslexic can see the word cat. My friend's son, Steve, said that when he was in the Army, at one point they wanted him to learn a new alphabet, and it was an Asian alphabet where all the symbols were just sticks in different directions. And he knew that he had met his Waterloo, that this was not anything he had to share with the Army. He could not do it. Mastering new alphabets is not a skill that dyslexics have to offer. And so our final slide today is one of my magic window slides. I took this photograph out my front window, and you can see me. I'm right here. I look like a ghost. That's my reflection, taking the picture with my phone. And over here is a lamp that's on the table. And over here, that's a lamp that's on the other side of the room. All those things are reflections, but you can also see through them to what's outside the window. This scrawny cat's one I've been feeding for several weeks, and my plants and my little garden out front. And pictures like this, to me, represent some of these concepts that we're talking about the multidimensional nature of perception and the overlaying of reality and our visual perception. And besides that, I think it's a pretty picture, and so I'm going to leave it up while I read a couple of paragraphs from the book today. Davis writes, "The idea of a moving viewpoint may sound mystical, as if it were some sort of extrasensory perception. This phenomenon could be explained by any number of theories, including the quantum physics concept that perception itself produces effects on the object that is being perceived. Another explanation might be some form of perception that has not yet been identified, like the sonar that gives dolphins a three-dimensional mental image of their surroundings and even allows them to communicate these images to other dolphins. Or it could be conceived as a form of imagination, where the person mentally constructs multiple views of the object or symbol being perceived. The simple fact is that the mind's eye does perceive multidimensionally, and learning to interpret our visual perceptions adds greatly to our understanding of this mysterious and wondrous world in which we live." And thus ends our featurette. As always, I thank you for listening.